Hi, this is Scarlett Johnson. I'm with Moms for Liberty in Wisconsin, and I wanted to go through a school board meeting that I attended virtually on Tuesday night. This is the Wauwatosa School District. Wauwatosa, Wisconsin is a community that used to be pretty, at least center-right, and that has changed over the last years. In 2022 and 2023, I was part of a group that really tried hard to expose a curriculum, human growth and development, and it's called Comprehensive Sexuality Education, Advocates for Youth 3Rs curriculum. This is a curriculum that, as of 2021, my Wisconsin State Department of Education, Wisconsin DPI, Department of Instruction, had put on their website that this is the human growth and development curriculum that they recommended. They mentioned it on the website, they posted a link, and shortly after, schools started to implement this curriculum for human growth and development, and comprehensive sexuality education is a radical, terrible new look at human growth and development. This is not anything that, if you're my age, if you're Gen X, this is nothing like what you experienced when you were in school, and it's nothing like what your children had experienced when they were in school. This isn't just about puberty, and this isn't just, in high school a kind of actual scientific, hey, this is your body going through puberty, this is, what having a baby entails, all of that stuff. This is a K through 12 curriculum, starts in kindergarten, and deals with some pretty disturbing topics. But that is a whole different thing for me to record. So let's just, we're just going to go through this school board meeting. It was on Zoom, so could not just screen record. So I had to set up my phone and my iPad. So this is kicking it old school.
The excerpts, there's a great deal of information regarding the role of gender.
Here I am adjusting.
We have specific directives as part of those executive orders to refer to sex instead of gender. There's a definition of social transition that directly relates to conversations and interactions with psychologists and guidance counselors in the school setting. So those are pieces to be aware of as well. And then information coming out of the Department of Education recently that was specific about, there was a memo. It was replaced by another memo last week that was specific about the return following not only the executive order, but also there was a case in the state of Kentucky and the nationwide effect of essentially the way that they described it is taking off the books the Title IX 2024 regulations and returning to the 2020 regulations.
Real fast, I'm going to interject. So at this board meeting, they are discussing the recent executive orders issued by President Donald J. Trump. And prior to this, they discussed ICE, and I was not able to record that whole part. So when that is available on board docs, we can review that, because that was some pretty interesting things. What is happening right here is something that's happening in school board meetings and in whether it's open discussion or a closed discussion. These are discussions that are being had, and they're being had all across the country. But for the districts that are more woke, they are trying to deal with what's happening with these executive orders. What does that mean? As you can see, the lawyer is speaking to the board, and she is basically saying that, listen, under these executive orders, we're no longer, we're told that we're not supposed to talk about gender. We're supposed to talk about biological sex, male, female. And what the government can do is withhold federal funding. So basically, these executive orders are telling the Department of Education, this is how Trump is saying, this is how my administration is going to view how education is going to be run for the next 4 years. And basically, we're going to root out all the DEI, all of the woke stuff, all of the gender ideology, all of the critical race theory, all of the restorative justice, PBIS, all of these theories that have basically crippled the American educational system for so long. We're going to clean house. We're going to get rid of this stuff. And the executive orders basically set the stage for the new Department of Education. Now, the nominee, Linda McMahon, her hearings are tomorrow on Thursday. So that's why I wanted to get this out as soon as possible. Now, she's going to be talking about Title IX. She also mentioned the Kentucky case, the injunction. So right before Biden left office and President Trump was inaugurated, there was a federal injunction that basically wiped the Biden rewrite of Title IX off the books. Moms for Liberty, as of July 2nd, 2024, had been successful in their lawsuit in the 10th Circuit. And there was a nationwide injunction, but it had a specific scope. Schools that had children of members of Moms for Liberty and a few other groups, those schools they did not have to adopt the Biden interpretation rewrite of what consisted of biological sex under Title IX. So they did not have to fear, repercussions from the federal government. They did not have to worry that there would be complaints and that the federal government could withhold funds. The Kentucky case made that a blanket nationwide injunction that applied to all students, all schools. What she is saying is that, so not only do we have executive orders protecting women and girls sports, not only do we have executive orders defining that there is no gender, sex means male, female, that's it, that in the eyes of the federal government. And there is this injunction. And prior to the injunction, many other federal cases that each of whom sided with Team Sanity, sided with us and said that the Biden rewrite was unconstitutional. So basically, it's all over, in my opinion, and you'll hear her talk about that.
We also received notice recently that the Department of Education will pursue enforcement action, not only based on complaints to the department, but in addition, based on media reports. And so you can see that in Denver Public Schools, where the department.
This is important. Not just complaints filed with OCR, not just Title IX complaints, but the media. That means us. That means parents. So when we report, when we, activist organizations like Moms for Liberty, like Parents Defending Education, like so many out there, when we start to file complaints and file incident reports, when we get this information out to the media, when we post it on social media, when it gets attention, this will get the attention of the Trump administration, and there could be some real change. That's really important.
The department has already initiated an investigation of the Denver Public Schools for a violation of the orders, and that is ongoing right now. So those are just a few things that have come down the road, and I'm happy to answer questions in combination with administrators who can talk about the impact here.
So in Denver, the Trump administration, the Department of Justice is already looking into a case where in the girls' bathrooms, they were made basically unisex, that a student that identifies as transgender could use the girls' bathrooms. That didn't apply to the boys' bathrooms, apparently. The girls' bathrooms were suddenly now like all unisex. And so there's even before Linda McMahon has assumed her job as Secretary of Education, the Trump administration is hitting the ground running. They are basically sending a signal that they're going to take this seriously. And it's not just going to be about sports. It's going to be about the shower rooms, the locker rooms, the bathrooms, that they are going to take up this test case and be aggressive with it in Denver, in Colorado, which, pretty woke, right? So that's really interesting. And I'm really, really happy to see the Trump administration just so aggressive right out of the gate.
Renee, just a question based on what you just said there. What is the outcome when a school district or anywhere in the country is under investigation? What does that mean for everybody who listens? Like, is there under investigation, then they say what they're going to say and they close the schools? Or do they fire everybody? Do you change the curriculum? What does that mean?
An excellent question. So a lot of people are very focused on what's happening in federal court. Most of the time in schools, you're not in federal court every day, right? Instead, what we see more frequently is complaints to the Office for Civil Rights, U.S. Department of Education. And when they start, and this is all how it works now. This is how the case processing manual looks now. The last time I looked at the case processing manual, which was earlier today, it looks like this. You could Google it right now, and it could be that there's a new case processing manual that is not what I'm telling you at this moment. But the way that it's worked and the way that it appeared today is that they start an investigation and they decide whether or not they're going to proceed with the investigation. And one of the first things that they do is offer the opportunity for mediation. If there's a complainant, it's potential that you can find a resolution with the complainant in mediation. If that doesn't work or you skip that step, then the next step is just a resolution with the department. The department will say, here are the types of things that I think we might want you to do. We can sign a resolution agreement with the department. After that, sometimes there's a full-blown investigation. And I think really where you're going with this is what could eventually happen, and they would issue directives. They would say either do X, Y, and Z, and if you don't, we're going to withhold federal funding from you. So most of the time when we're involved in an investigation with OCR, the result is one of those first outcomes that I mentioned, mediation or resolution, or they'll say, here's what we want you to do, and the district will do it. Because the districts generally don't want to risk losing federal funding.
So in that process, it sounds like.
So yeah, districts do not want to lose their federal funding. In Wisconsin, federal funding accounts for 7 to 10% of their budget. Title I, students with special needs, lunch programs, so a lot of this district, Wauwatosa, actually just had a huge, trying to push a huge referendum. So they're hurting for cash. They need some money.
From the federal government side, they would be bleeding the local districts for money to essentially fight for themselves, to continue with their policies and things that have already been in place. Just taking money from the schools and basically, in the end, threatening to take even more money and funding from them.
That is the that's the authority that they have, and so we expect that
they do.
Yes, that would be the result of potentially some of the investigations that occur.
Dr. Jess-Banger had said earlier about sometimes local legislature can supersede an executive order. Or does Wisconsin have something in place where any of this would apply, or are we kind of looking at the whole executive order in our case and saying we have to deal with the whole thing, or are there parts that
They're looking for a way out of this.
we can kind of put off to the side right now and deal with other parts of it? I guess.
They don't want this.
Does that make sense? Jason, just to clarify, federal law
They don't want to comply with.
would supersede executive order. Well, gotcha. Okay, I retract the question.
I have a lot.
No, this may be more of a question for Mr. Ecker, but let's say Secretary McMahon comes into office and then just says, I mean, the Trump administration already released 7 executive orders pausing federal funding on a variety of things. And even though those were ruled unconstitutional, there's still, parts of them are still being enforced. So if Secretary McMahon, under the direction of the Trump administration, were to just say, we're pausing all funding completely from the federal government, is there like a contingency plan? Is there like an emergency fund that we can draw on to supplement that?
Thankfully, we don't get much money from the federal government in terms of overall revenue. That said, the state government gets a lot of money from the federal government, and then it flows down to us. So
the federal funds, they are given to the state Department of Instruction, the Wisconsin Department of Instruction, and then those funds are passed down to the school districts.
Our title grants come from the federal government directly, but yes, the state receives money from the federal government that they then send to us.
So ultimately, we would be forced to borrow money in that case if that just ceased and trickled down through the state and they didn't use their emergency fund.
If all those things happened and we didn't receive the revenue we anticipated getting, then yes.
Well, I guess first of all, I am thankful that we've had communication come out from our district to our families and students, acknowledging that these executive orders can be negatively affecting their mental health, their feelings of safety. So I am thankful for the guidance and the messages of support that have come out from, I know Mr. Pinion, Ms. Holland, and Dr. Means. So thank you for that. My question is, a lot of these executive orders, and this one specifically, are being challenged actively in court. And like you stated, they haven't come with guidelines that would typically come with executive orders. So how rushed do you think, or how quickly do you think the school board needs to adapt our policies to align with our values, especially on this one? Is this something that we should be looking at policies immediately? When do you think the guidelines from the federal government will be coming down? And how quickly does the...
So notice she says, one school board member, our values, align with our values. You'll hear that a lot.
Yes, enforcement of those guidelines have to take place?
Those are great questions.
Really
And, typically, when I say typically there's guidelines, it's because there's typically a body of law and then there's guidelines that follow it, but it's not like it happens immediately, right?
The guidance does not happen immediately. Secretary McMahon has not yet been confirmed. Her confirmation hearing starts tomorrow. She will I don't see any reason why she won't be confirmed. Once she is, then guidance will be forthcoming. But right now, of course, right now it's a little bit of a holding period. But the signal has been sent. They know. They can read the executive orders. They're watching TV. They're watching the speeches. They're already receiving some notes from the Justice Department, and they know what's coming. It's basically anti-woke. Okay, the DEI is going to go. They get it. They know. And they're desperately just trying to find some life raft for gender ideology. That's what they're going to be discussing for the rest of this meeting for CRT. They just can't believe this is happening. They don't want to believe it, and it's very difficult for them. We should, they will find their footing eventually. Right now is a good time to expose what's happening and root it out so that we can start to defund the programs that are federally funded, the woke programs, the gender ideology, anything that is federally funded and in violation of the Trump administration's directives and the eventual guidance from Linda McMahon. That's going to be our job. We need to expose this stuff.
But we really don't know how quickly. Like I said, I think after the confirmation hearing on Thursday, there may be guidelines that follow from that, and maybe not.
Yeah.
That's really difficult to predict in terms of enforcement. It depends district to district on a couple of things. One, it depends on whether, like in Denver, there's media reports that would prompt the attention of the Office for Civil Rights. The other issue is that if there's a parent complaint, then that also initiates a response. And so, in some districts, there may not be any media reports and there might not be any parent complaints.
Let's make sure that there are media reports in every woke school district. Okay. If you have a Moms for Liberty chapter, or you are solo parent that you know that there's some things going on, let's expose this stuff. Now is the time. We cannot wait. We should strike while the iron is hot. Right now, we need to start to file complaints, file formal complaints, put what you know is happening in your school district, in your school, in your state Department of Education. Get it out there. Let's get these stories. Let's put them out there. Let's find all the programs that we need to defund. Let's help Doge. Okay. Let's we're mama bears. We have all become sleuths. Let's help. Let's help direct the attention of Elon Musk, of Doge, of the Trump administration, Department of Education. What I've been told, while there'll be a lot of appointed positions at the upper levels, at the lower levels, there will still be, the swamp. And a lot of those complaints first, they go through at the lowest level. So you're going to have to keep filing the complaints. And if you filed something under Biden, it's a good time to maybe try and refile it. And now it will be heard more favorably. And, if your complaint is dismissed, appeal and keep appealing until you get attention. And you can always contact people like me. You can send DMs, Moms for Liberty, Parents Defending Education. I have friends, Awake Illinois, Courage is a Habit. Oh, there's so many. And I know I'll miss some, but there are so many great parental rights groups out there that you can contact. And you can always contact Libs of TikTok. When they post something, it goes viral. It gets the attention of social media, local media, and national media. Right now, sunlight is still going to be the best disinfectant. There just aren't enough lawyers out there to deal with all things woke in all of our education, whether you're red, whether you're blue.
And so the policies aren't immediately amended, then if there is no impact. In other districts, there may be more media attention or a complaint, and then policies would be under scrutiny more quickly. So it really is an individual determination that every school board is making. And some school boards, there's school boards making decisions from here to here. Some will engage in anticipatory compliance and make changes quickly. Others will say they're going to take a wait and see approach, and then others will hold out for quite some time, or even maybe decide that they're going to intentionally.
So basically, sane school districts with center right members, more conservative school districts, they're already in Wisconsin. I know they are already hitting the ground running. They are rooting out. They want to root out all the DEI. They want to find it. They want to go back to the Trump 2020 definitions of sex as far as Title IX, if they haven't already. Many already have. They took the Kansas decision, and they already just they were smart enough to see that they took their chances. If Trump was going to win, they knew that they'd be okay. So that's what they're, and then some are just the wishy-washy, the squishy. They're going to just wait and see. Apparently, they're going to try to be invisible, like the Homer Simpson into the bushes, like you don't see me. And then others, like Wauwatosa, well, they want to be the resistance.
Not compliant.
And just for instance, looking at the policy 5517 on bullying,
So they're talking about their school board policy on bullying, and this is the method through which a lot of the woke agenda has come through. So their anti-bullying policy will reflect that Title IX protections extend to gender identity. So you cannot discriminate, you cannot bully any student that has a non-conforming gender identity. And by their definition of bullying, misgendering, or not using the correct pronouns, or not using the new preferred name, and all of that. So that would be considered, bullying.
Direct language right in there, where it has language saying under harassment. The definition paraphrase here: physical nature on the basis of sex, including transgender status, change of sex, or gender identity, race, color, etc., and so forth. So, I guess the question is: do we need to go through all of these again with a fine-tooth comb, or are we?
Do they need to revise their
Are we
policy that they just
looking at? I guess I don't want to say the word taking a stand, but like.
Or are we
as a board, we need to represent the values of the community, but also we have to follow the law. I'm lost on where to go. If somebody were to ask me, or if I saw that happening right now, today or tomorrow, if a teacher sees that, they need to follow the policy we have right now, or do they need to refer to what's listed here? What do we tell our staff?
That's the decision the board or the administration, if it's delegated to the administration, would need to make.
I think Ms. Rowland, to answer your question, said it well. You have to decide how urgent this is from a policy perspective in terms of how you want to communicate with your policy committee to fast track certain policies. But we have an obligation to follow policy as it stands.
Mr. Finnion's got a question.
If I may, I'd like to add that to kind of give perspective, and it's really a difficult topic, I think, on a lot of levels for a lot of us. Our policies around harassment, bullying, discrimination are well developed as they are, right? They came from our North Star, from our values as a district. I lean into them almost every day. I think I would just offer into Renee's point, there may be a gut because I know our values as a community and as a board as a whole. I would just offer, and it's hard to say that to the point we're trying to make here is how much you want to either intentionally non-comply or to fight something could be contraindicated if it creates a civil rights complaint that then is open to student records and is open to then target our children.
So, in my own work earlier today, I had a conversation about the importance of doing the work, even if that meant changing what it looks like at the name level. So,
Did you hear that? I've been thinking about, we're going to be doing the work, even if that means changing some things at the name level. They are just going to call it something different, rename it, obfuscate. She's saying it right there. We're just going to change it at the name level.
I mean, there's a lot in this policy, for example, that is very strong, and I think the assessment would be which parts of this would stand up anyway, even if those words were gone. So that's what I have board members thinking about that, like the actual use of it. When we see bullying, not everything's on the list that happens with bullying, and we still know how to identify it as bullying. So that to me, that's where we'd be thinking about, and I appreciate my mindset's very much there too. It's the work of protecting our children in school.
It's the work of protecting our children. Let's continue.
In school day to day, that has to be key. And if that means that we have to remove some things in order to not have that focus, bring unwanted interests, then I think that's the feedback the policy committee is going to need to have from people. And that's not, I mean, there's at the same time to balance sort of in that process of taking terms out, there are people who are going to be hurt by that. And we have to really keep that in mind about how, if we did it, how we would do that.
Yes. So basically, just by removing gender identity, that doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all in schools as far as bullying. And this is something that I've heard school boards say all over Wisconsin, that we already have the language that protects students from bullying. It's already there. We don't need to redefine sex in order to protect these kids. We already have clear and concise guidelines as far as protecting kids from bullying. It's kind of rich from this school district because this very school district was described last year as Hunger Games in the hallways. There was so much violence in some of the schools, unreported, that it finally took a school board member to go on a local conservative talk show and basically become somewhat of a whistleblower and just say, look, this is what's happening. And it's happening, unfortunately, it's happening to kids with special needs. They're getting bullied, and the school's not addressing these issues. It persists. So the same district that's all about the children and their work is protecting the children. Well, only children that are politically correct, I guess, because they just seem very intent on protecting the children of illegal immigrants if they are in the school district and children that identify as transgender. They're just very, very obsessed about certain children at the expense of all the other children. And the test scores in this district are not great. So perhaps they should be focused more on teaching kids to read and do math and notice. I mean, at this point, this school board meeting it was an hour and a half. They're not talking about the reading scores. They're not talking about math scores. They're not talking about science-based reading, teaching, phonetics. No, this is what they're talking about. And it gets a little bit worse.
I have a question on Title IX policy. We approved two policies. We approved the 2020 policy for about, that was in place for maybe 15 minutes.
The 2020 policy.
And then we had the 2024 policy that was in place for about 45 minutes. Have we now reverted back to the 2020 policy, or do we need a policy committee to act on that in order, like that one seems particularly timely?
Okay.
Just to that point, what are like the main points? Like what has changed from the 2024 to the 2020?
So I'll tell you two things. The first thing I'll tell you is that is the change from 2024 back to 2020 is a change that most districts are making, because it's not only the executive order, there's also the order from the district court in Kentucky that has a nationwide effect and takes 2024 literally off the books as if it never existed. And so most districts are reverting back. In terms of the specifics, in terms of the differences, one main difference is the 2024 covered and protected gender identity.
I'm trying to read through like the executive order and where they talk specifically about like the social transitions. To me, this really stood out because the way they define this is that includes things like psychological care, which I was really surprised by and wondering how they would.
Counselors in the schools.
How do they do that when HIPAA should cover what happens in a session, this private thing? But it also includes names, modifying a person's name, which they give a specific example, which is a very female identifying a name to a very male identifying name. But like, where is that line drawn? If my name is Maureen and I want to go by Mo, is that allowed, or am I not allowed to use a nickname because of this? And then pronouns or calling somebody.
This is ridiculous here. She understands. She understands that, you know, my name's Scarlett, and if you call me Scar for some reason, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about that a child takes on a new gender, new pronouns, a new name, that social transitions are not going to be facilitated by schools. Schools are not healthcare centers. Schools are not the local psychologist office. Schools are there, teachers are there to do their job and educate kids. They are not supposed to be their therapist. They're not licensed for that. That's not appropriate. And we need to have our local schools get out of the business of therapy.
Non-binary was also another thing that is included in this definition of social transition. So can you explain, like, what does that specifically mean in in the school setting, and what does that look like?
Right. No, I can't. But I can say is a couple of things. We anticipate that when there's guidance, that there will be additional information regarding that. But we see that
what it means is you're no longer going to show your Amaze videos what is gender to 4 and 5-year-olds. What it means is you're not going to secretly read to other people's kids, I am Jazz, and talk to them about changing their gender. What it means is that you are not going to keep secrets with students and keep them from parents. What it means is you are no longer a co-conspirator in the classroom, conspiring against parents. What it means is you don't instill values in kids anymore. You just teach them reading, writing, science, social studies, math. Okay, you're out of the business of indoctrination. Okay, and if you don't like it, you're not going to get federal funding. And by the way, in Wisconsin, we have a $12.6 billion budget. 7% of that is federal dollars. And that amounts to over $800 million. So Are these districts willing to risk funding to special needs kids, to lunch programs, and to poverty programs? Are they willing to risk that just because they want to say they? That's going to be a question that they have to answer.
Extent of the prohibited activities and designations include all the ones that you mentioned, and also including use of facilities, that the order expects that those types of activities won't be undertaken by school staff, and specifically, as you can see, counselors are mentioned and psychologists are mentioned, and there will be a tension, and one of the tensions, like you mentioned, will be between FERPA and how does one know what's going on in the context of sessions with a counselor or a psychologist? If they, from a practical perspective, that when OCR conducts an investigation, they interview people and they ask questions and they have access to information about what's happening.
So I think to Jason's point earlier, it's so complicated because like how do we guide?
It's not that.
I guess we have our policy in place now, although I don't know that we have any policy that specifies anything around like chosen pronouns.
The policy that Wauwatosa has, were they to stay in place as of right now with these executive orders and what anyone can see in the future with the Department of Education, they keep these policies, they're going to lose federal funding. It's really simple. It's not complicated. They can choose to keep their gender ideology and lose federal funding. It's their choice.
Or your chosen preferred name or whatever. I don't know that we have anything like that in place. So I assume.
And they can also risk lawsuits from parents, lawsuits from students that their rights are getting violated.
It's based on what our families and children ask for.
Yeah, I mean, we have our standard anti-discrimination, harassment policies, bullying policy that spells that out, not to the nuance you're talking about, but we also have a lot of training within student services that has been ongoing over the last 2.5 years about gender support plans or student support plans, how you operate through them,
2.5 years of gender ideology trainings. They just said it. 2.5 years of trainings about gender support plans, about pronoun use, about social transitioning kids. 2.5 years. They have been, I would say, longer than that, but they're admitting to 2.5 years of serious investment into these types of trainings. And they're like, now we're just supposed to give it all up?
What reach you do or don't have, how you communicate. A lot of that is very personal and very specific to individual students, where they're at, their comfort, all of that. So there's been a lot of training centered within student services. Is there really an integral part of helping students through that?
Student services.
I mean, does it make sense for us, again, while all of this is up in the air, there's no clear guidance, there's going to be lawsuits that are being filed and have already been filed with all of these different executive orders. Does it make sense to just status quo?
What
we're doing?
The whole continuum of
options.
Right. So there are just, like I said, there's districts saying we're going to anticipatory compliance. We're going to change things right now. We're going to try to get in line. Ones that take that approach, the wait and see approach, and then other boards that decide that they're going to intentionally not comply. So there's that whole continuum, and it really depends on each community.
One, it's always so interesting. Like in a normal course of action, we would adjust policies when we have the chance to adjust policies where maybe a wait and see norm.
If Trump had lost and Biden had put forth executive orders doubling, tripling down on gender ideology, they wouldn't have been able to get to those board seats fast enough so that they could make sure their policy aligns with the Biden administration. Okay, the same people, the same types of people all throughout the state of Wisconsin, the same woke educrats that were, oh my gosh, with the guidance by the Biden administration in May of 2024, we absolutely must comply. They were starting to comply in May before August 1st, before the August 1st deadline. They were already like, we've got to follow federal law. We can't lose federal funding. Oh, the kids, we can't, kids need the money. They couldn't countless school board meetings. I personally witnessed board members just like this convention. We cannot lose that federal money. Oh my gosh, you don't care about kids. Now suddenly they're just A-okay with losing federal funds. Hey, we don't want to move too fast. Why don't we just take a wait and see approach? Such hypocrites, proving they don't care about kids. They don't care about kids. They care about their ideology. That's what they care about. They care about their status in their community. But the kids, the majority of kids, that is not their concern. And educating kids, obviously not a concern for this school board.
But this moment feels so heightened. So I'm going to go with Malik and what Mr. Morrison had.
Even
On the same topic of the executive order under the name ending radical indoctrination in K-12 schooling, this may be more of a Dr. Marble question, but as curriculum goes through our curriculum review process, and as far as I'm aware, there may be some social studies curriculum that will go through that process within the next 4 years.
there's so much woke curriculum.
Are there any steps that as an administrative team you have to take to confine yourselves or to conform with?
I will be posting. If you look through my X account, you will see lots of posting about woke curriculum in Wauwatosa. I'm going to make sure that in this thread and over the next few days, you're going to see a lot of radical woke curriculum and indoctrination. And if the Trump administration wants to have a shining example of some school systems in Wisconsin to make an example out of, Wauwatosa is one, Madison is another, Eau Claire another. Believe me, just call me, okay? You know, I will direct you in the right way in Wisconsin. I will show you the receipts.
This policy and preventing, in the administration's words, radical anti-American ideologies, and making innocent children compelled to adopt identities as either victims or oppressors, solely based on their skin color or other immutable characteristics.
That's what you've been doing.
Like, does that have any influence on your actual adoption of curriculum?
Not exactly. We have a pretty robust process that we go through that has a wide variety of, it's a wide vetting process. And there is a cultural component into it, making sure that we are representing the school community that we serve. So,
we'll teach history. We'll teach history the way that it unfolded. And the study of history hasn't changed. We'll continue to teach the facts.
I would love if they would.
I remember vividly
teach the facts.
A few years ago, this was a topic that came up. Well,
history. Instead, kids
watch. The legislature was asking, are we teaching critical race theory? If you remember, there was a few years ago where the issue of critical race theory came up, and our position has always been we're going to teach American history. All of its richness, its uniqueness, and the opportunities that we have.
Remember when all those crazy people like Scarlett and Moms for Liberty and all those parents were saying that we're teaching critical race theory? Yeah, we were. That's basically what he's saying. Yeah, we were teaching it. Of course, back then, they told us we were crazy. They told us that we aren't teaching critical race theory. And critical race theory is a lens through which curriculum is taught. It is a theory that states that all things should be viewed through the prism of race and the oppressor-oppressed narrative. It is an anti-American, Marxist critical theory. They're saying, yeah, we did it. We just call it history. What they call critical race theory, we call teaching history. That's what they're saying. It's weird how 2022, well, it's 2021, 2022. Oh my gosh, what is this critical race theory? oh, we don't even know what it is, as we exposed over and over again that they knew exactly what it was, and that's the lens through which they were providing education to our children. And that the Wisconsin Department of Instruction, like so many state departments of education across this country, they sent their teachers to be radically indoctrinated by equity consultants and diversity trainers and DEI hires. And in Wauwatosa, they have a DEI administrator on staff who I am told makes over 6 figures. So there's a position, hey, they've got their own, I'm sure they're going to rename it. Remember, they're going to rename it. She's going to be the belonging, she's the culturally responsive teacher. They're going to rename it. They're going to come up with some other name. Resilience. We're going to talk about resilience. That's what I'm hearing. They'll rename it, and doesn't matter. You can repackage this crap. It's still crap.
To examine how we have evolved as a nation.
So let's say the Trump administration determines that new course AP African American Studies promotes anti-American ideologies, and then as a result they pressure DPI, and then DPI comes to you and says, we don't want you to teach this anymore.
I would faint.
First of all, can they do that? And second of all,
we don't want you
what
to
do you
teach
do
this.
then? Like, how
That would be a
are
miracle.
there measures that you have to take to
That
properly
may
comply
happen
with that?
when they get rid of
That's
Jill.
where I would lean on our legal counsel to be able to guide us on what our course of action is.
That's 3 steps ahead of where we are right now.
Yeah.
What we can tell you.
If there is a curriculum that has radical critical race theory that's anti-American, and believe me, this isn't subtle. They are never subtle. You're not going to pick up the book and think, oh, I'm confused. No, you will know when there's critical race theory, when there's radical ideology. It's apparent. Okay, that's why President Trump was elected. They went so far. This is a school district that had an elementary school, a STEM elementary school in Wauwatosa, ranked 5th in the state of Wisconsin. Really good school, really good STEM school. Ranked 5th. This school board is shutting that school down because it's too white. They said that school's too white, which is not true. The demographic makeup of the school reflects the demographic makeup of the community, but it's too white. They're shutting down a outperforming school, a school with whose board are volunteer parents. These are not conservatives. These are not MAGA. Okay, they are these are Democrats. Okay. Eventually, cults eat their own. So now they're going to have STEM for all, which means basically STEM for none. They could not have a school that was outperforming, a school that with almost no intervention by this loving, caring board. Oh, they just love the children. A school that was succeeding without a lot of resources, tried to stay under the radar, okay? And look at these people. You definitely want to stay under the radar. Just tried to stay afloat because it was a good school. Well, the eye of Sauron, the woke eye of Sauron, eventually noticed, hey, this school's doing too good, making all the other schools look bad. Everyone wants to get into this school. And maybe some kids didn't get into the school. It's all lottery. And that started to get some of these little wokester parents angry. And you won't like them when they're angry, right? Yeah. If they cared about kids, they would try and figure out how this STEM school, this elementary STEM school in Wauwatosa, how it succeeded. and try and replicate it, copy it. No, instead, they're going to shut it down. That is what the woke mind virus does, and that's why it needs to be rooted out.
We're going to teach African American studies. We're not trying to indoctrinate anyone.
Yes, they are.
So our statement earlier of our goal is to keep students safe.
That's embedded.
What Mr. Pinion said is absolutely true. So we could be that school district that's on the bleeding edge, and we'll say we're going to fight the executive orders. There's some school districts that they're conspiring as we speak to put together.
So this is the superintendent of Wauwatosa saying there are some school districts in Wisconsin conspiring as we speak. I hope the Trump administration can hear that. A superintendent who's obviously talking to lots of other superintendents in Wisconsin, and they're telling him, we're conspiring as we speak. We are conspiring to work against the federal government. We're conspiring. What, civil disobedience? We're going to roll the dice? I guess we don't care if we lose the federal funds. They're conspiring. I hope this gets the attention of the right people so we could find out exactly what school districts are conspiring to undermine the rule of law.
Together their position to mount the resistance, if you will, to the executive orders. There are others. This is what Ms. Aldana is telling.
Hence the title of this, The Resistance. Do not think that because we have Trump where he is now, do not think that because Linda McMahon will be confirmed, do not think because Elon Musk, Doge, do not think that they are just going to lie back and take it. They are mounting the resistance. We need to strike while the iron is hot. We need to make sure that we keep dismantling and interrupting and interrogating their systems. They did this. Now we've got to undo it. We've got to march right back through the institutions that they captured and take them back.
There are other school districts that are calling their legal counsel and they're saying, tell us what we need to do to comply now to the executive orders. Our strategy is in the middle. We want to observe. We want to see what happens, what unfolds. Until then, we will lean into our policies. Our very astute and smart board is saying, wait a minute, but these are our policies. And so maybe we need.
So he's saying that we are going to stay in the middle. We're just going to lean into our policies. All of their policies are not in line. Their discrimination policies, their transgender policies, their gender support policies, their culturally responsive teaching policies, the curriculums that they have adopted, all of them defy openly Trump's executive orders, and they will defy openly guidance issued by Linda McMahon. They are not being neutral. That is not the truth. If they are going to lean into the policies that they have right now, the policies that, as of today, do not fall in line with the Trump administration and the executive branch, then they are in defiance. Then they are part of the resistance. They are just saying, we're not part of the resistance, but they are. There are members of this school board that are employed by Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, at least one that I know of. Children's Hospital of Wisconsin provides transgender care to minors. Do No Harm has done an excellent expose of that, as has local Wisconsin Right Now, a tremendous publication. They did a very intense reporting. I think there was 3 parts exposing how much resources are spent by Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. I don't even think they got to the bottom of all of it. So there's that.
Need to configure some of our policies now to better represent our community. And then once the executive orders kind of unfold, we are now at least not continuing to react, but we are standing up for the values that we believe our community stands for. That's why we wanted that.
They are basically saying, bring it, President Trump, bring it. It's on. We're going to stand up for our policies, our values, and whatever executive orders that you write, might as well write them on toilet paper and throw them down the toilet because we don't care. That's what they're saying right now. This is what I want you to see. I know it's like over an hour, and I hope people stay tuned in, but we had to get to this point. This is super important because you have an inside view. If you are wondering what's happening in your school district and you haven't attended a school board meeting, this is what's happening if they aren't changing the policies. If you are in a district that is woke, a school district that you know is pretty woke, this is what they're doing, okay? And school board elections in Wisconsin, April 1st, early voting starts 2 weeks before that. I hope that you get out to vote. I hope you take the time to find out what candidates are going to stand firm against DEI. What candidates are going to say, I'm going to prioritize teaching kids to read, not teaching kids how to be transgender.
That is the exact reason why we wanted to have this conversation tonight as a starter to what we consider to be something that will be ongoing discussion for the next 4 years.
Yeah, a war, basically. They're going to basically be going to.
I think what I just heard from you, Dr. Means, is that I'm looking at specifically the term patriotic education. I have no idea what that means. Nor do I.
I believe I do. I believe patriotic education is APSI.
Well,
isn't there a state exam?
The Patriot.
That was mandated a few years ago. Yeah, that's patriotic education.
But there is language in this executive order that.
So they're going to call it patriotic education, guys. Critical race theory is now patriotic education. You can't be against that, can you? Man, you got to pay attention even closer now. CRT is patriotic education.
Book defines what it is, and it doesn't make any real sense. So I think I'm just reiterating. I think what I heard was we're going to teach history, and we're going to teach our curriculum, and we're going to try to stay in the middle until definitive
teach history.
legal guidance is there to tell us one way or another.
Extremely
and that
radical curriculum.
We're not the district that's saying we need to comply immediately right now.
We're not the district.
We're also not the district that is going to say one of our nukes and take on the fight, you know. But
well, there's going to be a rulemaking process, and some of this stuff says in the directives that agencies under executive authority will now commence the rulemaking process. Well, we stand ready to see what the rules are.
I think that what I've heard tonight is the only one where that isn't the case is with the Title IX policy.
So
is that the Title IX policy for the moment, while not settled, is we need to align our policy back to the 2020.
So they're gonna,
and that should happen.
They're worried
by the
about
next
being sued.
Policy committee meeting to come back to the board. Is that
playing on?
Is that accurate?
Yes, many layers in terms of the Kentucky case and the executive order and the Department of Education's directive. All of those pieces coming together to make that one an action item.
The one thing, Mr. Watt, here I would articulate is that the district, that what wasn't stated in your thing is the district is also pushing very hard to teach history better with strong student outcomes and more student growth.
Yeah, they're really fighting to teach history better.
So I would suggest that whatever words are used, there's a certain amount of resources and services that are good for all of our students, and that is having a depth of mental health services available or whatever. They're
Let's
needed
just call it
for
happy time. We won't use mental health. We'll
teaching
call it
our
happy.
students the process of inquiry. These are the things we should be doing, and all of them have, depending on how we do them, have the potential to build resilience within our schools and among our school children, and where we can make sure that our resources are directed towards the need that's identified to build that resilience.
Build the resilience.
Provide, what I guess I say is what's good for one, potentially having it there could be good for all of our students. So thinking about not necessarily the categorical, but rather what kind of school district do we want to be for all of our students, and making sure our resources are landing in those spaces.
Landing in
as
those.
Of course, we also have to be adjusting to the policies as they shift, but that doesn't mean that we stop doing what we do well, which is educating our students to.
So let's just write policies with new words, and we're not going to stop doing anything. We're just going to do everything just the way we were. We're just going to use new words. And then we're going to make sure that all of our gender ideology and critical race theory lands where it needs to on the kids. Doesn't matter what we call it. We're going to call it patriotic history and happy time and building resilience. Watch out.
Have a patriotic, open mind, and to treat each other with respect and dignity.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can just really lean into those strengths that we have as a district.
We treated a lot of the moms really with so much respect and dignity. I can remember that as one tried to choke me.
And try to, listen to our community of how we're doing on that and what else we need to shift in order to make sure that's happening in all of our schools.
I think our main point that we wanted to express to you this evening is you in the community, you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions as the governing. There are some people who are saying, as Mr. Wadier said, put up your dukes. We want to be that district on the bleeding edge. There are some other districts that are saying, no, we want to comply immediately. Our counsel is that we need to take a wait and see approach with the goal of making sure that we are addressing each unique situation for its uniqueness. And we'll wait to see how all of this unfolds. You do have the authority as the governing board to step back as you look at some of the policies that will ground us and anchor us to say we want to re-examine things. You talked about 5540 at length this evening. You can look at your other policies, and you have the right as the governing board to reaffirm what you believe are the
superintendent's telling the board, you don't have to do anything. You have the governing authority to do absolutely nothing and just keep all of our woke crap, all of our woke policies, just reaffirm them. Hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do as I'm telling you exactly what to do. That's what's happening. Oh, just an idea, I'm just throwing it out there. And this board will do exactly what he says.
The values that the community wants your schools to represent. You always have that right. Our guidance to you right now is that we believe that your current language positions us well to respond administratively.
We don't have to do anything. And we can respond. We can respond to your...
I have a couple questions about things that haven't been discussed tonight.
Oh, this part's rich.
There's been so many. Has there been anything around mental health resources in a crisis facing our adolescents and children?
Crisis that
with the federal government stepping in and advocating through executive order for mental health resources.
Out of school, when you mess them, when you take away their lives.
We have a crisis of learning in our country. And I remember after Sputnik went into space first,
I wonder
why. I believe it was Eisenhower. Articulated a desire to want to push and make.
We've spent $12.6 billion in Wisconsin, and only 5% of Black students in Milwaukee can read at grade level. Our proficiency rate in Wisconsin is abysmal. 31%. 31% of Wisconsin school children can read at grade level in the 4th grade. Why is that? Well, it's because all of these educrats have prioritized indoctrinating kids these easy, like these feel good, like curriculums. They can pat themselves on the back that they're such a good person and just ignore and write off the fact that kids can't read when they graduate their school systems. They can't read at an effective level. They can't balance a checkbook. It's just gross. It's gross.
That's number one in the world. The only time we've ever focused on being number one in the world in math and science. Has there been anything that we've seen in executive orders around math and science education, getting back to basics, if you will?
Have not seen that at this time.
I'm sure it's coming.
Add an addendum that they're actually, some of the money around Title I may actually be reduced. That's a potential.
Is there anything around special education cost coverage?
I mean, the special education money that you use to fund all of this stuff instead of actually giving it to kids with special needs? What about the fact that you have fundamentally transformed special education and parents don't like it? They are not happy with the changes, the ICS for Equity, the ways that you have instead made general ed teachers responsible for being special ed teachers and gifted and talented teachers. The things that have been done in the name of special education, there isn't a curriculum that is teaching kids that sex was assigned at birth. I have yet to find one that hasn't been funded by money meant for kids with special needs. It is disgusting what they have done because they know that no one wants to lower the funding for kids with special needs. Everyone wants to help kids with special needs. So they stick the worst of the worst garbage in that bucket so we won't find it, but we're going to. We are going to make sure that the funding for special needs goes to kids with special needs and that makes their lives better and actually focuses on resilience, not that fake resilience in which it is resilient for a 9-year-old boy to put on a dress. That's not resilience.
So the IDEA, I believe we get some
IDEA.
Possible funding from the federal government that comes to the state. Is there anything executive orders around that item?
At this time.
Well,
okay. I'm okay.
I should say, not that I'm aware of since we started talking, but I haven't had my phone in front of me. So if anybody cares to get involved,
We look forward to our federal government joining us and advocating and making sure that every school in our country has the support and resources and high expectations, and would welcome coffee or a McDonald's trip with anybody who would like to talk education policy.
So funny.
I want to ask us to take about a 10-minute break.
Well, this has been long, but it is an inside view into a woke school board and how they operate. I think that there is some valuable insight here. And if you, like me, are going to be spending a great deal of time exposing DEI, gender ideology, critical race theory, and a lot of other nonsense that is costing the state of Wisconsin billions of dollars, I think, billions of dollars in wasteful funding. I really do believe that. I think there is billions of dollars of wasteful funding in Wisconsin, and that's just one state. Every state. The coffers of state departments of education have become slush funds for politics, for indoctrination, for paying off equity consultants that used to be superintendents. It's a small world. You know, when an equity consultant and a DEI team make double what a teacher with 20 years experience can make, yeah, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. It is in the state of Wisconsin. So it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work, because we actually do care about children. We actually care that they are educated in a political free environment. I would love robust conversation. I would love kids to learn history, the history of America, good, bad, everything, all of it. I would like for them to learn that in an age appropriate manner and with the background of patriotism. It is okay to think that America is great. Not perfect, but great. It is okay to support President Trump. It's okay for a family to vote for Trump and be MAGA and still have their children attend a public school. They should not be treated like lepers. And that's what happens right now. And it shouldn't continue. It's time to make education great again. And I know that President Trump is going to really work at doing that. And I think we all should support nominee Linda McMahon. Tune in. I'll be tuning in to the hearings tomorrow. And I look forward to a lot of change in the Department of Education. And I support, reducing the Department of Education, making it more efficient, more accountable. There's a lot of talk of moving the funding to states. As we do that, this is Wisconsin DPI right here, okay? This maybe the Wauwatosa School Board. This is exactly how the bureaucrats in the Wisconsin Department of Instruction, this is how they think. We need to have some sort of accountability if we're going to move more money to the states. We can't just be writing blank checks to these bureaucracies in the state. We're just going from one problem to another. We're going from a big federal bureaucracy to just creating an even bigger state bureaucracy. If you're in Wisconsin, and I'm going to air this tonight, so on Thursday, on Friday, you can go vote. There's a primary. There are 3 candidates that are running for the position of State Superintendent of Wisconsin. I have endorsed one, Brittany Kinzer, Kinser, Brittany Kinzer. Go vote for her. She is an independent. She's independent thinker. She's not the lifelong Republican. She's not a big mega conservative. But what she is she is sane. She is independent. She is aligned with us on so many things. She rejects gender ideology. She rejects critical race theory. She supports the executive orders in which that President Trump has put forth that will protect women's sports, women's private spaces, and she is supportive of that. And she will prioritize academics, and she's determined to make the school rooms in Wisconsin political free zones. She is not a political person, and that's what I really like about her, that for once we have a candidate for DPI that just isn't engaged in politics. Like, that's just not her thing. She has been all about educating kids and running charter schools, and she's been a principal, and she's worked for Rocket Reading, and if you go to her website, which I'll post in the thread, you can see this is a person that could actually who wouldn't do anyone's bidding. She's an independent thinker, and she would be just laser focused on our kids, and she would recognize parental rights, and she wouldn't be playing word salad games with us. And so that's the end of this. Thank you for tuning in. It's, I'm going to do more of this. I'm just a regular mom. This is my guest bedroom. And I was able to do this because I had to pick up my kids early from school because it's snowing out. So please like it, share it. And hey, if you're in Wisconsin and you're not a member of Moms for Liberty, you should be. If there is